Hi, thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction. Today I'm going to talk about sustainable living. All my life, I've never been here. So I did not grow up with the word sustainable living as such. But one thing that was very prominent in my household was that nothing had to ever go in waste. Wasteful living was a taboo. Reusing plastic bags was a regular part of who we were. As an Indian family, we all do that. And one of the earliest memories that I have about sustainable living is that my grandmom, she had this huge shower and she would stack years and years of plastic bags, wrappers, from Big Bazaar 2012 to Reliance Jio 2016 and D-Mart, even before it was popular. She had a lot of these things wrapped all in one drawer. And over years, I always felt like she was a lady who would hoard things. But every Diwali, when there was an opportunity where we needed gift wrapping papers, this incredible drawer used to always come for rescue. And when I think of it, it reminds me that these were my earliest introductions to sustainable living. Because zero waste for her was far before Instagram. And she believed in the fact that everything had a value. Everything had a value in a way that it existed far more than for one-time thing. She believed in giving second chances to everything. She believed in giving second chances to everything that she used. So the plastic job has been a very integral part of how I understood sustainability throughout my life. And that said, as a conservationist and as an environmental advocate, the word sustainability to me has been always a slippery slope for some reason. Because how do you define sustainability? Let's say on one end we have something that lasts for a long period of time, and on the other end we have something that is just ethically produced. So how do you balance between those two core pillars of sustainability? Whether something is ethically produced or something lasts for a long duration. And that has been a very large conversation that I have been having with people around the world and also thinking with myself. Whether you find some plastic bottle more sustainable or a metal bottle more sustainable. Now the trick here is, a metal bottle might seem sustainable, but how do you know if it is really sustainable if the metal ore is extracted from a mountain, which resulted into deforestation to extract it? Would you say a plastic bottle is more sustainable in that case? Would you say organic cotton is more sustainable compared to normal cotton if it takes twice the amount of water? The word sustainability today has become something we use far often. Like, it's everywhere. It is moral, it is ethical, scientific, and incredibly marketable. And so we like to throw it everywhere, right? It's on airline website, it's on toothpaste, it's on shampoo. Sometimes I even wonder, how can a toothpaste possibly be sustainable? Does it smile back at trees? Of course not. But these questions are really important in understanding what sustainability looks like. And that's where the problem lies. With every second brand, influencer, and policy naming itself as sustainable, the word starts losing its meaning. It becomes a safe place for all of us to hide when we don't have anything to do. It becomes a space where we can go to when we say we are creating an impact. We nod at things without asking if they're really sustainable, and without asking questions about sustainability. Because sustainability sounds good, right? It's a positive word. But the word loses its meaning when we use it far too often. It becomes something we can hide to. So big learning about sustainability for me was during my early stage of learning in my school. I live in Mumbai and I was largely brought up in Mumbai. And during every monsoon, like all of you might know, Mumbai is always flooded. And during these floods, one particular memory that remains with me is when I was going, I once asked my mom, where does all of this water and this soup-like broth come from? And she said it was resultant of plastic. A plastic which was likely contributed by someone like me, which was passed through someone like my grandmom, who believed in giving second chances. This plastic likely got choked in a sewer and it caused large-scale water pollution. That was the first day I actually picked up a piece of garbage. And ever since then, I have gone to do beach cleanup, art projects made up of plastic, and also other projects which largely involve building sustainable futures. But when I was collecting all of this, my thought process largely was collect plastic, build a better world, and I can do it one day after another, all by myself. But that's not true. That's what everyone is trying to trick you about sustainability. Sustainability is not something you do alone. It requires collective action. When I was doing this beach cleanups and year after year work in garbage management, especially around Mumbai, one of the volunteers came to me and he asked me a very interesting question. Bhaiya, we collect waste every single week, but it keeps coming back. The day we collect waste, next day is back. So what are we doing about this? Is it really helping? And that question really opened my mind. It was the question which changed how I view sustainability. How we see sustainability is we do small acts and in return blesses the planet. And that's not true. Sustainability is not about doing less harm. It's about seeing what is the issue. And here, the garbage or the plastic that was coming through ties was a symptom, and it could not be cured unless the core was cured, which was the system that we live in. The system which puts plastic in the ocean, which in turn comes back on the shores. So sustainability isn't about doing less harm, it's about changing why harm happens. We return to reusing plastic bags, refuse straws, feel proud, and come back to our mobile phones, type, and feel good about ourselves. But that's not sustainability. Because this mobile we use it also made up of materials which are being extracted in really harmful ways. Now you might ask, Ajay, you're telling us about all of these things, but you have a mobile too. And that's the tricky part. So the mobiles we carry, as well as how we perceive sustainability, is very different from how it usually is in reality. Sustainability isn't about consumerism that we are made to believe in. It's not either about producers. It's very largely about systems that we live in. The real issue is the power plants, the industries, and the policies that the system sets in place. Because you and I can make small changes in our regular life, but when the system does not change, we'll always hit a ceiling that we cannot exceed. So what we really need in reality is a systemic change. We are made to believe that the definition traditionally for sustainability is what is followed by the UN, and it's been saying since 90s almost that sustainability, according to the Brundtland definition, is meeting the needs of present without compromising the ability of future to meet their own needs. And there have been over 200 definitions ever since. The three core pillars are planet, profit, and people. But all of these pillars don't necessarily pull in the same direction. That they can be pulling in different directions. For instance, when you talk about profits can also mean economic for a country. And to grow economy, you need more jobs. And for jobs, there's increase in carbon emissions. At the same time, when we're talking about planet, we're talking about cleaner air. How do we get cleaner air? We plant more trees. We have more sustainable machines which release less carbon dioxide and practices which release less waste. But that also results into less production and less goods. So these forces, the planet, people, and the profit, does not necessarily go in the same direction. And it requires a fine balance. On the third end, there is people, which is equity, equality, and also common future for everyone, which always falls as a trade-off in this case. It gets squeezed between the other two forces. So, instead of the perfect definition of sustainability, I thought, what can we do to possibly make this easier and something that we can all act on? Let me introduce you to responsible sustainability. Responsible sustainability is very largely about proportions. Proportions in what case, you ask? Very good question, because it always begins with good questions. Responsible sustainability asks, does something, a product, policy, or even the action, create more good than harm across the time? That is the core pillar. It's very largely about accountability and how we account for the changes that are happening. Not everything that lasts is necessarily sustainable. Like I mentioned in the beginning, we have oil rigs that last, we have landfill that last, and we have corruption which lasts. We do not want these, and these are not the places we want sustainability. So responsible sustainability pushes you to ask better questions. Questions like, who benefits from this? Who pays for this? And can we afford the choices that we make today over the next 10 years? Because real change doesn't necessarily mean going towards greener spaces. It means to understand that beyond having green enough, we need just enough resources. And when we think of it that way, it largely becomes about governance rather than guilt. Because climate crisis in general, when we think of it, from a critical lens, is largely about a governance failure and its political inadequacy. So while you and I can compose back home and feel good about ourselves, the real change does not happen there. The real change lies in balance, in policy, and in budgets. And how do we make sure that we work on that? In developing economies and countries like India, while sitting on roads and protesting on a large scale, while also staying at schools, can have great effects on publicity, as well as creating awareness about crucial sustainable practices, the most effective way to drive change in democracies is to vote. Voting can be a game changer, because protests can amplify voices, but voting changes legislations and systems. We need to support leaders who follow sustainability practices, also companies, and build a culture of accountability. When we elect leaders who treat sustainability as nation building, who invest in renewables and regulate waste, and plan for climate resilience, that is active, responsible sustainability in action. Also, go ahead, ask difficult questions to your leaders. Why are they not incentivizing spaces where we can have more greener economy? Why do we have more incentives for public parking compared to public transport? These are essential questions. Questioning is a core part of being sustainable. Our choices from what we buy, share, and the talks we normalize, and the cultures we build, largely dictate how sustainability looks like. Real change begins with voting, petitions, policies, and not just personal habits. And this is crucial to what sustainability really means. Support fair, circular, community-driven actions. Support organizations which are accredited with sustainable policies. And of course, donate to organizations who actually have proven track record in doing impactful work. So when I think of it, what does sustainability really mean in today's time? I think the key pillar is not to blame each other for flying on airplanes or to have something extremely inconvenient at the stake of sustainability. Sustainability is about holding people accountable. It is about understanding that change occurs through systems and policies. And lastly, the fact that one person alone cannot drive it. Communities are what build sustainable action, be it through car-free zones, through car-free days, or even days when you make sure that you use little electricity. And again, at the last point, there's also the fact that we need to understand what's worth sustaining. Not everything that exists today is worth sustaining. So sustainable living also is largely about understanding the difference between what is worth sustaining and what to leave apart. My grandma did not know what sustainability was, but she noticed it and she practiced it. She cared and she also saved things because she believed they all had. So today when I hear people argue what's truly sustainable, maybe the point is not sustaining everything. It's sustaining what is important. And like empathy, equity, and a future for all. And remember, sustainability is about proportions. It is about care. And it is about understanding and critical thinking. Next time you see a stamp on any product which says sustainable, question. Questioning is the most important thing you can do. Question sustainable for whom and sustainable for how long. And when we start asking these questions and buying and living based on those answers to the questions that we had, we will find our way to good intentions and into the real world of impact. Thank you so much.